Money talks. It can also silence. That's happening now as leaders in Washington are using business threats in an attempt to influence the programming of the big TV networks. It's also one of the reasons Congress revoked our federal funding to weaken the role public media plays as part of the free press. But we have something going for us that commercial broadcasters don't have. We have listener support.
Check it out. It is just after October 1st, which was the date that the CPB stopped existing for real.
A corporation for public broadcasting.
And we are primarily funded by our listeners, people who value the station, by you. That's especially important now because our federal funding has been revoked and that corporation has been dissolved as of October 1st. Please support your future NEPM listening by giving during our fall membership drive, nepm.org.
If you love the Fabulous 413 and the Fabulous 413 podcast, give now.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Eastworks, 4 floors of makers, artists, and entrepreneurs located in the Mill District in East Hampton, where community happens. Learn more at eastworks.com. The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Northeast Solar, helping Western Mass families achieve greater energy independence through solar power, battery systems, and air source heat pumps. Northeast-solar.com.
Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte. Later in the show, we'll explore the changing seasons through one of the nation's oldest public gardens in Stockbridge as we hear from Executive Director Mike Beck about the Berkshire Botanical Garden's Fall Festival.
And we'll learn more about how you can help littles in the area play more inside at a fundraiser for the Bogin Playscape Project at 4-Star Farms in Northfield this weekend.
But
4-Star
first,
Farms Brewery
there
in
we
Northfield.
Go. But first, the shutdown continues.
And a new compatriot in the fight for democracy arises. Sorta.
Time for our weekly check-in with U.S. Congressman from the 2nd Congressional District of Massachusetts, Worcester's own Congressman Jim McGovern, in a segment we call McGoverning with McGovern. Congressman, you are currently walking to work, but the government is still shut down, as many people know. But the work continues for Congresspeople and for senators, and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, as of right now, has not caved, which is earning him some applause from some more progressive Democrats. There was a continuing resolution earlier this year where Chuck Schumer collaborated with the Republicans and the government continued to be open instead of standing his ground. Some are concerned that the House Minority Leader, Hakeem Jeffries, has drawn clearer lines in specifically what the Democrats are asking for with the extension of the ACA. And Politico is saying there's a rumor that if Schumer's caves, his leadership would be over. So how is this strategy going for the Democrats in holding their ground with the government shutdown?
Well, first of all, you're right. I'm walking to work, but it's kind of lonely because the Speaker of the House has kept all Republicans away from the Capitol. I mean, they're either on vacation or they're home laying on the couch, but they're not here doing their job. I mean, I said yesterday at a press conference that Republicans like to talk about work requirements for poor people, work requirements for people on SNAP, work requirements for people on Medicaid. Well, maybe we need work requirements for them. If they don't show up to work, they don't get paid. I mean, period. This is ridiculous, and this is a big deal. This is about millions of people potentially losing their health care. And in Massachusetts, 340,000 people will see their premiums go up by as much as 114%. They can't afford that. They will be without health care. This is a crisis. And I'm glad that Chuck Schumer is holding his ground in the Senate. I'm glad that Hakeem Jeffries is holding his ground in the House. But this is a fight worth having. And we can't just settle for, we'll talk about this later, because quite frankly, these people don't keep their word. The things that we agree on, Donald Trump, basically, eliminates funding that we've agreed on. He eliminates agencies and programs that he doesn't like, which I think he does illegally. A simple handshake doesn't do it. We need some guarantee that this is going to be fixed.
A lot of the problems with the shutdown is the optics on who the American people will blame for shutting the government down. And there was some concern that the Democrats would be blamed despite the majority that the Republicans have in Congress. The Republican messaging gets much more complicated when you once again, as Democrats, have an unlikely ally in Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is one of the most vocal Republicans, but she has joined with Democrats in wanting to release the Epstein files, which I know you tried to force the Speaker to swear in the Democratic representative that would allow for that last signature to release those files. But Marjorie Taylor Greene on television saying, I'm going to keep talking the talking points when my own adult children can hardly
Right.
afford health insurance premiums.
Right.
Is there a possibility now with the Marjorie Taylor Greene branch of the Republicans to actually get some things done?
Well, I think that's precisely the reason why the speaker isn't calling Republicans back, because if a vote was forced, he might very well lose when it comes to health care. I don't, agree with Marjorie Taylor Greene on anything. There's
Well,
that old
two
saying,
things it seems like, the Epstein
right,
files
right.
and this.
A broken clock is right at least twice a day.
Oh, so that's the two
So
times, I guess.
but I mean, the old saying, you don't have to agree on everything to agree on something. But she's listening to her constituents and her kids who are worried about the fact that they won't be able to afford their health care. There's a reason why the speaker is telling Republicans not to do town halls, because he doesn't want them to hear from their constituents. I mean, this is a big deal. Health care is very personal, and people need it and they want it. And as they're learning about the fact that we can do something about it, I mean, they're stunned. Like, what the hell? This is a Congress that worked overtime to make permanent tax cuts for multimillionaires and billionaires. I mean, that was their priority. But when it comes to extending the ACA tax credit, which can, again, if it's not extended, will force millions off their coverage. They're not even in Washington. This is crazy. And again, it shows, not only a difference of opinion, but, I don't share their values. I think most people I represent don't share their values.
Speaking with U.S. Congressman Jim McGovern, you mentioned how you're still going to work and the Republicans are staying away. There are many furloughed federal workers that may not be eligible for back pay after the government is funded and reopened. There appears to be a memo from the Trump administration that goes against the 2019 Government Employee Fair Treatment Act. Will these furloughed workers, these workers who may still be working throughout this shutdown, get paid? And do Congress people get paid regardless of whether the government is shut down?
So the law you referred to, Donald Trump signed it into law. And so under the law, these workers must get paid. Now, he may try to not pay them and withhold their paychecks, but it's illegal. And then that'll be something the courts would have to deliberate on. But the law is the law, and it's clear. So, he can threaten all he wants, but if he does not pay these workers, it is illegal. And in answer to your question about whether members of Congress get paid, yeah, they do. But I submitted a letter to the finance office asking that I be treated like my staff and everybody who works up here, that my pay be withheld until the government reopens.
So your staff is not getting paid. So Kobe, who works in your
Right.
Northampton office, is not getting paid right now?
Well, don't tell him.
I won't. We're speaking with Congressman Jim McGovern on a certainly much more serious note. We are 2 years off of the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel and the 2 years of relentless bombardment and terror that the Israeli government has rained down on the Palestinian people, the United Nations, and many others calling this a genocide 2 years in. The Trump administration did propose a peace deal, and Israel and Hamas seem to have agreed to this first phase of the peace deal to pause fighting and at least release some of the hostages, said President Trump yesterday. What do you think about this peace deal, and do you think it'll hold?
Well, first of all, I think it is important to stop the bombing, to stop the killing. If that's one of the results of this, then that's a positive thing. We want the hostages released. We want prisoners that Israel has released. But there's a lot that needs to be done, including guaranteeing Palestinians their right to self-determination, their own homeland, and a future. It's kind of early in the process, but if we can stop the killing, I think that's a good thing. And if we can get the hostages and release some of the Palestinians who are in detention released, I think that's a good thing. I also believe, again, I chair the Human Rights Commission, I also believe that people need to be held accountable for their actions. People who are guilty of war crimes need to be held accountable. I mean, if we don't, then they will happen again and again, maybe not in the Middle East, but in other parts of the world. People need to know that there are rules that we all have to follow. And when they violate their rules, they will be held to account.
Is there something you can do as the chair of the Human Rights Commission now to hold what many people are seeing in Israel as genocide or war crimes accountable now, and as and Hamas too, where they have committed these war crimes? Is there things that you can do at this point?
Well, I think support international efforts, the UN, the International Criminal Court, in their efforts to achieve some sort of justice for the victims. Victims, have to have rights. And so many people have suffered. And again, I think Netanyahu, if we just kind of turn a blind eye to all that he has overseen, I think that sets human rights globally back in a big way.
Speaking with U.S. Congressman Jim McGovern, we as a nation have seen federal troops in the nation's capital. We now see federal troops in Portland, Oregon, and as of this week, troops in Chicago, Illinois, with the president calling for the mayor of Chicago and the governor of Illinois to be in jail for, quote, failing to protect ICE officers. Here in Massachusetts, Governor Healy has told the president to keep troops away. If Trump threatens to bring troops to Massachusetts, what can you and what can Congress do about it?
Well, Congress is not going to do anything because Congress is not even in session, technically. And the Republicans agree with Trump in militarizing our cities and our country. I mean, I think this is frightening beyond words. I mean, this is not America. This is not what we're supposed to be. And yet the president persists, threatening mayors who disagree with him with arrest. I mean, this is what authoritarians do. This is what dictators do. And the resistance needs to get stronger and it needs to get broader because if not, he will succeed. And we have seen in history governments that were once thriving democracies move toward authoritarian dictatorships. And I don't want that to happen here. But if he sends troops to Massachusetts, we ought to stand with Governor Healy. We ought to peacefully resist. We ought to be in the streets. We ought to make it clear that we still believe in an America where the U.S. military is not in control of our cities and towns.
There are some that are viewing these federal troops in Democratic strongholds as a beginning of a civil war. There's an interesting article in Mass Live, our local digital newspaper, from John Misek talking about an idea called soft secession, which is something I've thought about but haven't heard it so succinctly named. He writes, "You've heard of quiet quitting, now get ready for soft secession. It's the notion that blue states can find a way to leverage their political power, their wallets, and their cultural clout to thwart the aims of the Republican Trump administration without actually splitting from the union and its gaining currency on social media. The idea would be that we would withhold billions of dollars in blue states worth of federal funding. Some Democratic activists have embraced this approach and see it as the only peaceful way to resist as a state. Are you a proponent of this so-called soft secession?"
Well, I haven't read the article, and that's an interesting idea, but I do think we need to be thinking about a more meaningful and a more effective resistance than what we've seen up to this point. And I was at an event the other day, mostly with Republicans, many of them who were working in the Trump administration, and I raised this issue of what's happening, the troops and the fact that, Trump is basically trampling all over our civil liberties and our rights. And, they kind of just poo-pooed it and said, well, his bark is worse than his, and this is just, him being him and it's part of the show. And I think for a lot of people, they bought into that. And I disagree with that. This isn't part of the show. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing when he's basically trampling all over the Constitution and taking away people's rights and weaponizing his Department of Justice. He knows exactly what he's doing. And if we don't wise up to it and figure out more effective ways to resist, he will win. I wake up every morning wondering what else we can do to meaningfully push back, to try to wake people up to the fact that this is real. This is happening now.
Congressman Jim McGovern has once again agreed to join us for the March for the Food Bank, the 16th annual march to raise money and awareness about the issues of hunger, which are going to become more pronounced in light of the recent announcement in SNAP cuts and all sorts of federal dollars that would have otherwise helped support organizations like the food bank being pulled. The march will be the Monday and Tuesday of Thanksgiving week, November 24th and 25th, with, if you're listening in the Berkshires, a mini march on the Saturday before in Pittsfield, where we'll do a couple miles of training. In lieu of telling us what gives you hope this week, Congressman, if people have not yet experienced the March for the Food Bank, which you've now done over 10 times, I believe, encourage people why they might want to consider going to marchforthefoodbank.org and signing up to join us.
first of all, you don't have to march all 43 miles.
You do. No, you don't. I've already
I know,
told you a million times you don't have to.
but even if you march a half a mile or a mile, it's for a good cause, an important cause. I mean, there are people in our community, every city and town in Massachusetts, every city and town in the country who are food insecure or hungry. This is about helping them, making sure they don't go without meals. Secondly, it reminds you that there are good people in our community who care about their neighbors, and I always find that particularly inspiring. You know, that people take the time and walk with us, and we have great conversations, and it's a lot of fun. So people right now, especially now, need help. This administration is cutting SNAP by $200 billion. They're freezing all kinds of nutrition programs designed to make sure that people have access to good quality food. I mean, this is incredible cruelty that is happening on the federal level. We need to combat that with incredible kindness at the local level. So I hope, please join with us. And hey, if you don't like me, you can come and yell at me for 43 miles.
Yeah, I can't believe more people don't do that.
Yeah, but you gotta pay. I mean, you gotta help the food bank.
You gotta raise money for the food bank. Worth it if you want to yell at a congressman for a whole day.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's a wonderful thing to do, and I applaud you for doing this for all these years and raising a boatload of money to help people in our community. And again, all this money goes to the Food Bank of Western Massachusetts. It helps people in our area, and it's an important cause.
I will also add that there is an ambitious goal this year of $650,000, which is unbelievable. It is a huge ask for the community, but for a very great need that is only going to continue to grow. Thanks for joining us for that, Congressman, and thanks for joining us for this segment every week. You can sign up for the March for the Food Bank or find more about it at marchforthefoodbank.org. And if you have a question for the Congressman for McGoverning with McGovern, you can email us thefab413@nepm.org. Thanks as always, Congressman.
All the best.
We'll head to Stockbridge to see the changing of the seasons firsthand at Berkshire Botanical Garden's Fall Festival after we hear about how you can help more playscapes reach more children's spaces that need them through a fundraiser this Sunday at 4-Star Brewery and 4-Star Farms and Brewery in Northfield. They do both. We'll hear from Tom Murphy of Bogin Playscape Project next.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by the UMass 5 College Credit Union, dedicated to creating access to financial well-being for local people, businesses, and communities. Insured by NCUA, umass5.coop. The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Real Pickles, a worker-owned cooperative in Greenfield producing organic fermented vegetables sourced from Northeast farms. More information at realpickles.com.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. The Bogin Playscape Project is named in honor of Nancy Bogin, an extraordinary early childhood educator and mentor for many. The project builds indoor playgrounds and toys that are donated to community child care centers.
And this Sunday, October 12th, you'll have a chance to support their efforts to bring more fun to more kids at a fundraiser at 4-Star Farms for grown-up kids in Northfield from 4 to 8 p.m. Good beer, good food, and an adorable cause. And with us to talk about the fundraiser and the playgrounds built is their builder and the person behind the project, Tom Murphy.
Tom Murphy is the director of the Bogin Playscape Project, has worked with preschool children for nearly 50 years, recently retired after 26 years as a pediatric occupational therapist for Cooley Dickinson Hospital in Northampton. He also worked on a grant program with the Holyoke Community Partnership from 1999 to 2011 and designed indoor children's playgrounds for programs in New Rochelle, New York and the Bronx in the 70s. Thank you so much for joining us to talk about this.
Hey, it's great to be here. Thanks.
Wait, you were a pediatric occupational therapist?
Yes.
What occupations do children have? This is child labor laws in this country. What is it, building playgrounds?
You know what? The work of children is play. So that's the answer. It is a big question because I think so many kids now are growing up with phones to play with rather than with toys and playgrounds to play on. It's a big change. If you've been working with kids for a long time, you see that childhood has changed, over this generation. A lot more sedentary time for kids. And I think, kids still need to play and move and explore, and that's how those brains develop.
What different things do you need to consider for an indoor playscape and even further, a preschool indoor playscape?
Well, my idea has always been to build age-specific because right now I have two designs that are out in the world. I have a toddler design for kids 18 months to 3 years old. And then I have a preschool model, which is age 3 to 5. And kids are different at that age. The same thing that would be exciting for a toddler would pretty soon get boring for an older kid. So my idea with this project was to design a very simple, call it a pocket playground that could just go into existing childcare centers, wouldn't take up much space, could be easily constructed of simple materials, and eventually they would show up in a lot of places. And it hasn't happened that way because the state of Massachusetts is very strict about what kids are allowed to do in childcare centers.
Mm-hmm.
It should be such a happy story, and it's kind of a long and not always happy story. I built a beautiful playground for the Care Center in Holyoke. I don't know if you know that place. It's
Yes,
a
we do.
wonderful center, and it was up for 2 years. There was no issues with safety. The state inspectors came in and said, you take this down over the weekend or we're closing you down.
What did they say was wrong with it?
Well, there are all kinds of rules. Just a good example, all of my toddler playgrounds have a swing because I think swinging is a really calming and organizing thing for young kids to have. It's very powerful tool, but you're not allowed to have an indoor swing in Massachusetts Child Care Center unless you have a 20-foot by 20-foot fall zone. And that's because the criteria they're using are based on outdoor playgrounds when kids are way off the ground. And that makes sense for 12-year-old kids who are doing underdogs. And yes, there should be a fall zone that big, but my swing is an inch off the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids never get more than 6 inches off the ground, but they still wanted a 20-foot fall zone. I'm still working with the state inspectors. I'm trying to get them to sort of see the light. I got 2 inspectors to come up to Greenfield where I had playgrounds, at the center school, and they liked the playgrounds. They're not bad people. They just get stuck with a lot of fussy rules. I've found that kind of has to be my mission along with trying to build things is, sort of get the state to open up their mind a little bit.
We're speaking with Thomas Murphy, who is the creator of the Bogin Playscape Project and who will be having a fundraiser this Sunday, October 12th at 4-Star Farm in Northfield, where we need to go. They grow their own hops there.
I know, it's real
They make
pretty.
great beer. They made a beer for the March for the Food Bank once, which was fantastic. And there will be all sorts of music and fun to raise money for this project. But it is named after Nancy Bogin, as we mentioned at the beginning, an educator. Tell us a little bit more about her and why you wanted to name the project after Nancy Bogin.
She picked me out. I was 18 years old, 1973, and I was really lucky in high school. I was able to join this alternative high school that let you do whatever you want to do. And the things I love to do now, all of them started when I was in high school. I started working with kids. I started playing music. I started building things. I volunteered in her program, and she hired me to work as an assistant teacher in a preschool. And I visited a playground in Philadelphia, and I said, I'd like to build something like that. And I came back and she said, go ahead. She was my mentor my whole life. Her and her whole family supported me when I was going through hard times. And when she died, I wanted to do something in her honor. In fact, her son is one of the people playing on Sunday. Her son, Josh, is a great musician, and he's going to do a set of children's music. It's really kind of an old home week for me because the people I'm playing with are people I've, known and played with for, well, Josh, 50 years, but many of the people, almost that long.
Tell us about some of the other folks that'll be performing this Sunday as part of this fundraiser for the Bogin Playscape Project.
Sure. And also, I want to just do a shout out to Chris Hooper at 4-Star for agreeing to do this. He found out that we were building the play school for Northfield, and he was very enthusiastic. So I'm grateful for their sponsorship. The other big donor to my program is Charlie Parham and his wife, Roxy Schneider. Charlie died a few years ago. His family has donated most of the money that I've used the last few years. His family has been incredibly generous. Roxy's son, Mike Parham, is the second act. He's playing with his band Mibble with Natalie Roll. Then my friend Mary Fleming and I are going to do a short set of Texas swing. She's from Texas, so we're going to do a set of that kind of music. I have good friends Mark Ricker and his wife Mary Ellen Cohane are going to do a jazz set. And then the last set is my good friend Ted Ellenhorn, and we're going to do a jazz and blues set. I don't usually get to put so many pieces of my life together in one afternoon, but it's going to be a lot of fun.
And it's all for a good cause, which would be this indoor playground in Northfield, and the fundraiser is in Northfield as well at 4-Star Farms there. And we're speaking with Thomas Murphy, who's behind the Bogin Playscape Project, but who was a pediatric occupational therapist for Cooley Dickinson in Northampton, which once again sounds contrary to logic. Occupational therapist.
Kid is an occupation.
I guess it is. But you mentioned before that, kids and the prevalence of screens and screen time is causing some problems. Tell us about more specifically what the benefits are for using the type of playground that you're installing for the physical health of these preschool kids.
The other thing that I've been doing for years is I do trainings for preschool teachers, and I have seen over the years the frustration. It's such a hard job to be a preschool teacher. They don't get paid what other teachers get paid. It's a really, really challenging job. And my sense is that when I was in preschools, kids had a lot more opportunity to play outside. They could ride tricycles. If you go to preschools now, most of them don't have swings anymore. Most of them don't have climbers. Kids so need that stuff. That's how kids learn about the world, is by moving. And when I do these trainings, my sense has been that kids are just desperate for this stuff. And when kids don't get it, when they don't get that movement that they need, you see a lot more kids acting out. You see a lot more kids getting labeled with all kinds of other ADD, and kids being put on medication when they're very, very young. I think that if we let kids be kids, if we had a world where kids could run and move and climb and swing, I think kids would be happier. I think the world of being, a daycare provider would be much easier. Most of the teachers I work with and do these trainings, they know what kids need, but they're told no. Take your swings down, take your climber down. It really shouldn't be that way, especially in a state like Massachusetts. We're progressive. We should be showing the way to other states. Our progressive values should really make us do a better job in providing for what kids really need, which is just let kids be kids, let them move, let them play.
A lot of red tape in a blue state, I guess.
That's a good way to say it.
You've been making these play spaces and playscapes for 50 years, a little over. What has changed about design over the course of those years?
Well, I'm more cautious because I donate these playgrounds, but I still could probably get sued. So there's liability everywhere. That's, again, a part of why the state, I think, is very cautious. I try to make my playscapes interesting and fun and exciting, but not dangerous. I think when I was 19 years old, I didn't have that same perspective. I didn't have the training. I hadn't been a therapist. The ones I've done now, they just reflect having worked with kids for a long time. I spent many, many years just on the floor playing with kids. I know how to have fun with kids. It's sort of in my bones.
We Gen Xers wear it as a badge of honor that we burned ourselves on all the metal slides and got launched from the seesaws and things like that. And older kids, too.
And older kids, too.
Exactly.
And the merry-go-rounds.
Yeah. Well, here's the question I have for you as a playground expert, Thomas Murphy. If a merry-go-round is at like a fair and has horses on it, what do they call the thing that goes around and around in a playground? Or is that also a merry-go-round?
You know what? You're not going to see many of them anymore. Where are you thinking of one?
I don't know, but they were all existed everywhere when I was a kid. What do they call those?
See,
are those also
I
merry-go-rounds, or is one a carousel and one a merry-go-round?
I thought
or
they were
different?
both merry-go-rounds, but I never saw one until we moved below the Mason-Dixon line.
Really? Oh, there
Yeah.
was one. We had one. I mean, I went on it all the time. You could really get that thing moving and launch somebody off of it.
That is what I learned when we moved to North Carolina.
Well, what is it called?
The thing is, I do the indoor stuff, right? So
Right.
people ask me
Okay.
all the time about outdoor stuff. I am an indoor guy. And that's important too, because you have to think about how many days of the year now it's too hot to go outside. Even a lot of places for kids have a nice outdoor place, but they don't get out there. In the winter, it's too cold. In the summer, it's too hot. The idea with these little pocket playgrounds is that kids who spend a lot of their days, a lot of their waking hours at daycare, have a place to play every single day they're there.
You've just completed the one in Northfield. Where is the next one headed?
Shelburne Falls.
Oh.
Whereabouts?
I'm pretty sure the elementary school, it's all these different schools. Certain schools in Massachusetts are not inspected by the state inspectors. And that's where I'm hiding.
Well, not anymore.
Luckily,
'cause-
no one listens to this show.
Don't tell anyone, please.
Have we done this all wrong?
Maybe we have. Thomas Murphy is behind the Bogin Playscape Project, where he's been making these indoor playscapes for decades now, where one will surreptitiously be installed in Shelburne Falls,
Like
where
magic.
one is in Northfield, and where a fundraiser is happening in Northfield at 4-Star Farms this Sunday, October 12th, from 4 to 8. It sounds like it's going to be a great time, and it's all for a great cause. Thomas Murphy, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
The playground, you know.
He's making another bad creation, day in and day out. We're halfway to our $1,200 goal on this final day of the fund drive. NEPM.org or 800-639-8850. And now to head into the mountains to celebrate the changing of seasons and the many beautiful plant species and activities you can enjoy at the Berkshire Botanical Gardens Fall Festival.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Comfort Bagel, scratch-made artisan sourdough bagels, spreads, and sandwiches for breakfast or lunch on Main Street in Westfield and at their new location in Holyoke at 92 Race Street. ComfortBagel.com. The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by the UMass Amherst School of Public Policy, offering in-person and online graduate programs in public policy and data analytics. Admissions now open at umass.edu/SPP.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. Established in 1934 as the Berkshire Garden Center and revered as one of the oldest public display gardens in the Northeast, Berkshire Botanical Garden is a not-for-profit, membership-supported educational organization with 24 acres of land at the intersection of routes 102 and 183 in Stockbridge.
Not-for-profit, membership-supported. That sounds oddly familiar to like our fund drive here
I
at
couldn't
NEPM.
imagine why it would.
The garden is open year-round for classes, lectures, workshops, and exhibits, and this weekend, October 11th and 12th, the Berkshire Botanical Gardens Harvest Festival returns. It's billed as the oldest and grandest festival in the entirety of the Berkshires.
Every October, the Stockbridge Gardens undergo a transformation into a hub for celebrating community, the natural world, and the region's agricultural heritage. And here to tell us all about it is Berkshire Botanical Garden Executive Director Mike Beck. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
A couple of years ago, my band did play this event, and it was the cutest, most awesomest thing.
Yeah, we always have wonderful entertainment. Bands of all kinds take part in the festival, so it's great to have a great selection of bands.
Including our friends from the O-Tones, who are going to be there this time, as well as the Wanda Houston Band, the Sunday Strummers Ukulele Ensemble, and Catherine Winston. It is a beautiful garden, and the festival looks really exciting. But what I also think is really exciting about the Berkshire Botanical Garden is at any point, if you go to your website, there is like a how-to of gardening. It's really like a tremendous resource for gardeners. There's even a gardener's checklist article about like what you should be doing this week of October in your garden, which I think a lot of people, who are amateur gardeners don't really know what to do when the weather turns to be like that.
And if you get the newsletter for it, it's beautifully snarky. Here's a list of things you can plant for your sad fall garden since you forgot. I appreciate that little dose of reality.
Yeah. Talk about the mission of helping gardeners across the Berkshires and Western Massachusetts.
Yeah, I mean, we've been doing that since 1934, like you said, and we were founded as the Berkshire Garden Center because we really were a center for people to come to find out about their own gardening. There are these big, fabulous estates in the Berkshires, but people, you and I didn't have these massive gardeners with teams of gardeners, so you wanted to learn how to do it yourself. And that's how we were founded, and that's what we're still doing until this day.
Let's talk a little bit about the festival this weekend, October 11th and 12th. This is a long-running festival, right? Do you know how long exactly?
We actually started the very first one in 1935.
Wow.
We were yep. It's the granddaddy of them all, and we've been doing it since then. We've always needed to fundraise, and we're still fundraising, and so this is fabulous for us.
Maybe there's like tanglewood for the summertime, but then when you want to weed your garden, it's like untanglewood.
I like it.
Especially because we've seen all the butter bar problems that you kind of have had around the side of invasive species coming in.
Yeah, that was fun to get
take care
a
of.
look to see how this professional gardening organization deals with the things that we all have to deal with here with like invasive species and stuff. But you also have have a big focus on native species on your website as well. But back to the festival. Tell us some of the other things. We talked about the music that'll be part of this 2-day festival at Berkshire Botanical Garden. Executive Director Mike Beck.
Absolutely. So we have about 80 vendors confirmed right now, lots of food vendors, lots of craft vendors. We really like to celebrate, all the creative activity that happens in our region. We have a big plant sale because, we know about plants. So our horticulture team has been busy putting together these wonderful bags of fall bulbs because that's what you do right now, plant those bulbs before it gets too cold. We'll have lots of educational vignettes. You can go there, you can find out how to plant garlic, you can get your little gardening fix in while you're there because that's what we're all about. The other thing is that we have a big cafe. So a lot of our volunteers, and we have about several hundred volunteers that work with us, every day of the year. So they're wonderful. And they get together and they bake for us. So we have a really old-fashioned, old-timey bake sale. And then we do clothing sales and we do accessory sales. So those are things that we've been doing for many, many years. People love to come to the festival for those reasons. And so we're excited to bring them back.
And pony rides.
And, petting zoo for the first time in many years. So that's exciting.
And the Scarecrow Walk and Design Contest also looks fun.
That's a new one this year. So we're really excited. We're working with community organizations, with other companies in the region, and they're all coming and dropping off their scarecrows all this week. And we're going to install them, and then people can take a look and figure out which one they like best.
That's so cool.
That's so cool.
There's a few places in the area that do these kind of things, but not that many. And I love the creativity that goes into the creation of scarecrows. And that's one thing you can see as part of the Berkshire Botanical Gardens Harvest Festival this weekend, October 11th and 12th. Executive Director Mike Beck, before you were at the helm of the Berkshire Botanical Gardens, you were a biochemistry patent lawyer?
I was indeed, yes.
Tell us about the transition between biochemistry patent lawyer to gardening.
This makes a lot of sense to me.
Maybe it does. I want the patent on the pluot.
Or hybrids of various lilies when somebody comes up with a new color or a new variation on something.
Yeah. Is that what you were doing, or what were you doing as a biochemical patent lawyer?
I was not so much focused on plants, believe it or not. It was mostly pharmaceuticals and consumer products. But I'm a big believer in mid-career changes and 180-degree turns. So this was very good for me. I love my background in the law, but this is the dream job, I have to tell you.
What is the patent that you're most proud of in your time as a biochemist patent lawyer for pharmaceutical companies?
Oh, well, I would go in the consumer products direction. We represented one of the big shaving companies, and they had a patent on a 3-bladed razor. You may know which company I'm talking about.
Yep.
Oh, I think so.
Yep.
The best of man can get.
We had a big patent war over many years over that patent. So it kept a lot of us very busy.
That's hilarious because one of my favorite Onion headlines in the satirical newspaper, The Onion, when all of these razors were going to 3 blades and 5 blades, they were like, F it, we're going to 12 blades. And the blades were going all different directions and they were cutting people up and stuff. So it's hilarious that you were actually in the patent fight for more blades on the razor.
I was in the weeds for that one.
How can you patent more than one blade on a razor? It doesn't seem legal.
Does it have to do with the connections, like how the blades are attached to each other or to the unit itself?
A little bit, and the angles of the blades. There's a lot of science behind it. So there are people, companies spend millions of dollars perfecting these blades, and and then they let the lawyers loose on it. So it was a big one.
This is exciting to me, as I met an alpaca farmer who was part of the team that created Cool Ranch Doritos for Frito-Lays.
I worked on some flavors for Doritos.
Cool Ranch?
Cool Ranch. I worked on Cool Ranch Doritos.
You're like, this is
So
like
you're
meeting
back
Elvis
on the
Presley
ranch.
right
Yeah.
now.
So I can take some partial credit for the Cool Ranch Doritos, but not for the Doritos per se.
Now I have met the head of a garden in the Berkshires who helped to bring the patent to the best a man can get.
Massachusetts grown.
Our beloved stadium as well. That person is Mike Beck, the executive director of the Berkshire Botanical Gardens, who will be celebrating once again their Harvest Festival this weekend, October 11th and 12th.
Can you talk about the transformation that happens at Berkshire Botanical Gardens as it goes into fall for this festival? Because I think people think about going to arboretums and botanical gardens in the spring when things are just starting to bloom and in the summer when things are in full swing. But the fall is a really fun time to be there too while everything is changing.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And we're actually just talking to all of our volunteers to do our public tours for our visitors to really sort of brief them on what they should be focusing on this time of year. Because you're right, you're not going to see these wonderful blooms or these exuberant displays that you have in the middle of summer. But I think fall is one of the most beautiful parts of the gardening season for all of us, especially here in this region where we have seasons. It's very important to talk about that, how plants have a cycle, how they sort of senesce and they don't die immediately, but they sort of wind down. And all of that is really, really beautiful. So that's what we're focusing on this time of year.
You also, apart from the festival this weekend, have a watercolor series, Painting the Garden, with Pat Hogan, who's an acclaimed watercolorist. Talk about incorporating the arts into the Berkshire Botanical Garden in this way.
It's become a really important aspect of what we do, and that's something that we've been growing and working on over the last several years. We now have an art gallery, so we feature artists from all around the country and the world in our galleries, and they do riffs on the natural world. That's kind of our theme. But because of that, we have a lot of interest in actually, having classes and teaching people about art and art classes and art skills. So that's been a really terrific opportunity for us to sort of expand the scope of what we offer here at the garden. It's not core horticulture, but it gets people to really appreciate the natural world in a different way. So we're really excited about that.
So you've got vendors from around the area coming, but also square dancing?
Yeah, so we're really trying to get back to our roots. And honestly, I'm still getting the brief on what that's going to actually entail because I'm terrified of square dancing, but hopefully it'll be really fun and hopefully people will enjoy it. No, it's really part of the sort of old-timey feel of the festival that we really wanted to embrace and bring back to the extent that maybe we sort of strayed over the last several years. We also have our hayride back, which we couldn't have for the last couple of years. So people love that. I mean, it's really old-timey, family-friendly stuff that we're doing.
As we talk about like the seasons coming into how Berkshire Botanical Garden works, this is kind of like the last hurrah for fall, even though it's mid-fall. What does the Berkshire Botanical Garden have to do to get ready for winter?
So that's, we do a lot of cutback of our, perennial gardens, a lot of cleanup, because if you're a gardener, the cleanup that you don't do in the fall, you're going to have to do twice over in the spring. So you want to get ahead of the game. And then, our educational stuff keeps going. So we don't slow down.
Mike Beck, who's the executive director of the Berkshire Botanical Garden. My wife is an excellent gardener. I get lazy when it comes to fall cleanup, and I'm like, let's just, for the pollinators, leave the leaves. I don't know how expert you are in actual gardening as opposed to leading an expert gardening center in the Berkshire Botanical Gardens. Who's right? Should we leave the leaves, or should I clean them up in the fall and not be so lazy?
I think everyone's right in a certain way, so I'm going to sort of split the difference here. So you can definitely leave some messiness around because I think as humans, we're sort of trying to be very controlling of nature, and nature doesn't always need to be controlled that way. So in terms of the pollinators, you're absolutely right. If you leave all of the stalks of your dying plants in the landscape over the winter, that's actually very beneficial for a lot of pollinators or native bees or native wasps that seek out these little cavities to nest in for the winter. So there's been a lot of research that's been done. So people say, if you don't get too freaked out about the messiness, just leave things in place and then clean it up in the spring when temperatures start moderating again. So that's absolutely true. Same thing about mulching and mulching leaves. I'm a big believer in just mulching and getting the mower out and mulching the leaves right into your lawn, even though it's not completely, like a manicured golf course look, but it's really, really actually healthy and healthful for your lawns. So you're absolutely right.
Good. We can split the difference.
Yeah.
A little cleanup, a lot less raking.
The event is such a fun time.
It does bill itself, as we mentioned, as the oldest and grandest festival in the entirety of the Berkshires, running since 1935 at the Berkshire Botanical Gardens. And the Harvest Festival returns this weekend, October 11th and 12th, and we have been joined by the executive director of the Berkshire Botanical Garden and the man you have to thank for your smooth shave this morning, who was the patent lawyer for the biochemical industry, creating the 3-blade razor.
You're smooth shaved like 10 years ago. Now we're up to like 6 and 7 blades.
I know. I shave my head in the shower every day, so I really appreciate the hard work and effort that you put into all of this for us, Mike Beck.
Thank you.
One day you'll have a stage big enough for my big band to come back and play.
You can find out all about the festival and more at berkshirebotanical.org. Thanks again, Mike.
Thank you so much for having me.
On the next Fabulous 413, Live Music Friday with Norma Dream, who'll play at Bombyx this weekend.
More music from the composer Rafik Bhatia from Sun Lux, who you can see at the Hope Center in Springfield Friday.
And K&E Theater Group talked to us about their production of Sunday in the Park with George.
A big thanks to Mary in Connecticut for telling us that the playground equipment we were looking a name for is called a roundabout. $50 to go on our fund drive goal, nepm.org. We'll see you tomorrow.